Hello and welcome to the Sias Plessis show. Thanks to everyone that has liked and subscribed to the show. We really appreciate your support. It's powered by Betway. Check out betway.co.za for more information. Now, joining me today, I'm a big fan, and I always say that on the show. Steve, my executive producer, always looks at me like you say that about everyone, but the show is about bringing in people that inspire me, that inspire other South Africans that have done tremendous things in their career. Paul Harris, Harrow, good to see you, my friend.
You too. It's been a while, eh?
Thanks for coming in, man. I appreciate it.
It's like a setup you got here.
Thanks, man. I can't take any credit. Steve and Ray put this all together. I just rock up and talk nonsense most of the time. And
You're good at it.
We've taken, 20 years, so it should be good at it now. But anyway, how are things? What are you up to these days? And I mean, your last cricket match was a long time ago.
Cheapers, I don't know how long ago it was. Was it 13 years ago? I think it is now. It's time flies. I think if I look at it, I just look at my son because I sort of retired when he was sort of, I think, 1. So I kind of know however old he is how long I've hardly been playing for. Feels like a different lifetime, to be honest with you. A lot's happened in that time. I've moved into sort of the digital payments world. Actually was involved in it before while I was still playing. Got a bit lucky. Met someone that had started a fintech business and helped him raise a bit of money, and learned the ropes through him. His name was Cobus Deploy. Super smart guy. In fact, his son is Lias Deploy.
Oh wow!
Very good cricketer.
Very good
cricketer. Yeah. He actually might play for England at some stage. I think he qualifies now.
I think it's a matter of time.
Yeah, he's a seriously good player, and his pops is a super smart guy. So, sort of learned. He was an old investment banker. Learned a lot about raising money and building a sort of fintech from the scratch, which is, I think, a thesis in banking. and it's been, ever since, that's what I've been doing in various roles, various places, and thoroughly enjoying it. Money movement across Africa has become a huge passion of mine.
Congratulations. I saw recently, also a couple months ago, you graduated.
Jeez, can you believe that?
I saw the YouTube clip with a very enthusiastic dean, I think it was, right?
He was very stoked.
He was very chuffed to make his presenting debut. But congrats on that. That's amazing.
The dean's actually a lacquer guy, the prof. I actually never met him until I got until the capping ceremony. And then he's sort of like, it's a bit of a weird vibe, actually. You got to bend over, he's got to tap you on the head with some round weird thing. Don't know why they do that. And then he kind of looked up and he was like, no ways. And then afterwards he said, can I do a bit of a PR punt for them? But Regent were brilliant.
Okay.
And I mean, I did pay for it. So they didn't I didn't get it for free. I'm not throwing it here. I paid the full price. But they were fantastic. It was something that I wanted to do, I suppose. Both my sisters have degrees. I didn't have one. And I was tired of them telling me that.
Okay, so there was a reminder, right?
I think every now and then it would come out, and I just thought, you know what?
What's that on the wall?
Yeah, you've got to do it, and it was hugely rewarding. I actually thought it was just going to be a sort of tick box exercise, but I learned a lot during that time, and it just so happened that my son actually had to start studying at the same time. It was sort of when he first started writing exams in primary school. So he couldn't give me any trouble because I was studying. So luckily he got his mother's brains. He does pretty well, and my daughter.
Harrow, I've got to ask you, I mean, this new chapter of yours, you've embraced it with both hands. How has it been, like, that transition? Because you mentioned that during your career there was this keenness on business, on learning, on figuring out where you fit into this world. But I feel like you've really embraced this and you've run with it, like you were with your cricket, working to get to a certain point and represent South Africa. Is that kind of the same sort of motivation in a way, if that makes any sense?
I suppose the good or the bad is only know one way, really, and that's to do things at 100%.
Sure.
There's no way in me to do things at 80. I think that does come from playing sort of elite sport and getting to the top. As you strive for so long to get there, and then you're there, and then you've got to work even harder to stay there. It's very similar, I think. In the beginning, it was really tough, I won't lie. Financially, it was really tough. You go from doing fairly well. I luckily sort of was quite frugal while I played and didn't buy Ferraris and Porsches. Not that I could have, but you know what I mean. Sort of saved enough to be able to manage that transition.
Yeah.
But if anyone tells you that it's easy, they're lying. I think the first 14 months didn't earn any money. Then the next year was 10 grand a month, and then you slowly build your way up. And it's literally from starting from scratch. You're getting the CEO tea and coffee and trying to learn as much as you can so that you can speed up that process. Fortunate that it's gone fairly well. been involved in some good businesses, met some good people along the way, some incredibly smart people, and tech is the future. We've seen it. I mean, you just got to look at the studio to see.
Yeah.
It's and if we can solve complex sort of banking, money movement problems with tech, for me, that's what gets me up in the morning.
Sure. I mean, if I look at how you've taken this next step, the graduation, right? And you mentioned smart people. If I look back at your cricket career, you had some pretty talented cricketers around you.
He's like the best.
Probably, arguably, one of the best test sides we've ever had. If I just look at the names on that list. And when you surround yourself with people of an immense talent or, IQ or whatever it is, or they're successful, does it feel it pushes you to lift your game?
Certainly. I think any good leader surrounds himself with people that are smarter than himself or herself. It was no different then. Mickey Arthur and Graham Smith at the time, we had a sort of decent test team, and then they made a point of bringing in guys like Morne Morkel. They made some hard decisions. I mean, they dropped Sean Pollock from the test side. I mean, there must have been a hell of a difficult decision to make. They wanted guys that bowled quickly. They wanted guys that that would scare the Aussies and the English in particular. Brought in Morne, brought in Dale. Mackay was still there, and we had Nulla in the background as well. And then they needed someone, I suppose, to sort of counteract all those fast guys. But it was set up by the fact that we probably had the best top six that I've seen. When you've got, I thought our best side was when we had Smith and Mackenzie opening. Then you had Amla at 3, you had Cullis at 4, De Villiers at 5, and Ashwell Prince at 6. I mean, that's
mad.
And then you haven't even got to Bouchy at 7. Yeah. I mean, you probably didn't even need to bat most of the time. So, and that was a hell of a team, and we became sort of really close mates. The team didn't change a lot. I think I was test number 66, and then JP Duminy was 67, and it was 2 years later. So for 2 years, there wasn't really a debutant.
Yeah.
Yes, we did mix and match. There were some guys that had played that came back. But it was a pretty set, hardened test team that didn't back down really for anybody.
You got your graduation cap. Do you remember the day you got your green? And
vividly.
Can you tell us a bit more about that?
It was at Newlands. Yeah, my wife actually missed that. She was late as usual. I always give her trouble about that. No, I vividly remember it. I mean, it took me so long to get there. I don't think you forget it. I mean, I was 28 when I got my cap. So I'd played a lot of first-class cricket. I'd gone and played in the UK, taken Colpack, come back. I vividly remember that. It was a very warm morning at Newlands. Graham gave it to me, and I'll never forget it.
That's special, man.
It's pretty cool.
Do you still have the cap hanging somewhere, framed?
Yeah, it's in my bar. Okay. I try to keep my bar low key. It's not supposed to be a shrine to Harrow.
It should be though.
Well, I don't know about that. There's a few things in there. I got my fridge for 100 test wickets that SAB gave me. That's in my bar. And then I've got my test cap that hangs up on just above all the brandy glasses are.
Dean Elgar brought his in here, and that thing's like falling apart. I know he's got a few more tests, but yours has been through some fines meetings.
Yeah, that easy. Yeah, he just had to bat. We had to bowl, so we sweated a lot more than him. So no, look, that thing. I only had one. Well, actually, I lie. I had 2. My first test cap I gave to my dad, and then after that, so from the second one, I used the same test cap.
If I'm not mistaken, was it your first test you got Sachin Tendulkar out?
Yeah, it was. Actually, he was my first test wicket because the first one wasn't out. It was Kartik, the keeper, who opened the batting. And he was given out, Asad Rolf gave him out bat pad, but he didn't come close to it, and there was no DRS.
Yeah.
Well, actually, the Indians didn't want DRS. There was, but at the time they didn't want it. So that time it worked against them, and then Sachin came in, and I think I got him caught slip. Boogie, Callis
that must have been somebody else, man.
I think that's what you want as a sort of new player. You want to come in and feel like everyone says it, feel like you belong. And I think once you get him out, luckily it happened it actually happened on the second day, not the first day of the test. I think then you kind of feel that if you can get him out, you can pretty much get anyone out. Yeah. So, it was pretty cool.
Looking at your career, and I know you get asked this millions of times, but what is it about cricket that you miss? Is it the change room? Because I'm sure it's not fourth day of a 4-day match where you guys are like being in the sun chasing 800. You know what I mean? Sort of thing.
No, certainly not. Look, it's not warm-ups. I can tell you that for free. Look, I think my wife always laughs at me. I think boy time is the big thing.
Yeah.
You spend so much time with the buggers that you miss that. I don't think that ever goes away. And then the feeling of winning a test match. I mean, there'll never be a bigger high, I don't think. And let's take personal stuff out, like the birth of your children and all that stuff. We all know that's important. I'm talking about stuff you'll miss in cricket. The feeling of winning a test. You can do a big deal. You can business deal. You can make some money here or there. You can do some cool things. But I know that there'll be nothing that'll reach that level of ecstasy of winning a really hard fought test match against India in India on the 5th day. It won't happen again.
And enjoying an ice cold drink afterwards, right?
I think celebrating success is a good thing. I really do. It doesn't come around often. I've noticed in business as well. You have more bad days than good.
Yeah,
way more. You have more sort of days where you think that you're not going to survive than days than you think you're going to. So I think that's the good thing about cricket is, and especially that team, is it toughened us up. I think as people, it certainly toughened me up as a person. It made me more patient, which is a massive issue. My wife tells me all the time. It certainly made me more hardened. And once you get there, you've got to stay there, as I mentioned before. And that makes you a bit more selfish, which sounds bad, but it's not.
Yeah.
There's got to be an element of it in everything you do.
And was that your approach when you bowled? I mean, I know your specific role was to potentially dry up runs and put pressure from one end while the quick boys did some bashing from the other side. What was your approach?
My approach was to go at under 2 and over. That was the goal. I didn't quite get that right. I think I went for 2.5 and over, 2.5 or something in my test career. But it was to go at under twos. At the time, we had such good seam bowlers that we didn't really need someone to really be a Shane Warne. I was very far away from that. But you just needed someone to understand what they needed to do. And just sort of my skill was not missing. That was the skill. There's obviously talk that I could have been more attacking at times, and it's maybe fair. Possibly there was a few more times where I could have pushed to be a bit more attacking, and tried to get a few more wickets. I think the culture of cricket at the time as well was very fast bowler based.
Yeah.
Although it was a good shift. I think Graham started getting a great idea of how to manage a spin bowler in a test match as we went on. I think now it's completely different. I think Keshav he's absolutely superb.
Yeah.
And he gets used in different ways. He's a fantastic bowler and an even better man. So I think times have changed a bit.
Yeah.
I think that was the role that I had to play. For me, playing a test match, you tell me to play a role, I'm playing it. I don't care what it is, or if it's glamorous or not. I just wanted me to do well for the team and help the team win test matches. That was the goal.
We'll touch on the work you've done with Keshav. I know you've worked closely with him. But if I think about, firstly, your height, that's an advantage, obviously, depending on the surface, what you're getting out of it. But also, was it a case of a feel thing, from the top of your mark and sort of going through that action and feeling the ball out of your wrist?
Yeah,
and they knew it was maybe going to be a good day? Or
I probably didn't have you wouldn't want to copy and paste my bowling action. It was sometimes a bit round arm, and it was something that I struggled with a lot and tried to work on a lot. One thing I did was bowl a hell of a lot of overs. So I bowled so much in the nets, it was scary. So as I said, my skill was I didn't miss. So yes, there were days where you sort of took a while to get your rhythm, but for me, you said landed on a 5 rand coin, I would have landed it there pretty much 9 out of 10. Did it have as many revs as other spin bowlers on it? Possibly not. Could I, but I really worked hard on my action. Richard Pybus was key with that. He really helped me a lot with trying to get my action more grooved and sort of more like you would want a traditional left-arm spinner's action to be. But if I look at it now, you take a guy like Jadeja, very similar, sort of action than I had, bowl the ball quite quickly, and has been hugely successful. So, again, I think things have changed a bit in how spin bowlers are managed, but certainly don't have any regrets.
I think also it's about mindset, right? Backing yourself. And like you say, my strength is not missing. So regardless if it's Sachin Tendulkar, Rahul Dravid, whoever it may be, you bowled to some quality batters over the years. It's about the mindset, right? And being in the right frame of mind.
I used to get irritated if they weren't playing. So some guys would go, Sachin's injured, that's great. I'll be pretty upset.
Yeah.
You want to play against guys like them. I mean, people say forget about who's on the other end. I think that's impossible. I think that you got to back your skills, right? You know that if you're bowling to whoever you're bowling to, it's the same thing, really. You're trying to hit the top of off, maybe top of middle and off as a left-arm spinner against a right-hander. If you're a left-hander and you're bowling to a really good left, like a Sangakkara or someone, you want to hit the top of off stump. If there's a bit of spin, if it's not, you want to hit the top of middle. It doesn't change for who's batting there. Yes, you might have to change it up a bit more and be a bit shrewd with your field settings because they're good players. But the general strategy stays the same. And that's sort of what I decided to do, was be a bit of a metronome and hit the same spot over and over and over again. And I haven't met a player in the world that if he doesn't score for 2 overs, doesn't try something.
Yeah.
So there's been no one that I can think of. Maybe Hashim every now and then would just go, bugger you, I'm going to bat the whole day, and he'd be able to do it. But in general, they'll try something. So that was sort of the game plan. And, the Oaks were petrified of Dal and Morne. They really were. So I'm surprised, actually, in a lot of ways, that a lot of those teams didn't try and take me on a bit more because our seam attack was so good.
I think you're not a human if you're not terrified of Dale Steyn and Morne Morkel. I mean, that's gas. And 2 very different fast bowlers that could do serious damage, and they did crazy things with the ball at the same time.
Yeah, I mean, it was great having them in your team because you could actually be a bit of could be a bit abrasive if you wanted to be, especially as a spinner, and Dale was my roommate in the beginning. We called him Sunshine. He had long blonde hair. That was from the movie Remember the Titans, that guy that comes in with his long blonde hair, old Sunshine. And so we became, and we still are, incredibly good mates. So, having the best bowler in the world as your best mate and roommate, it goes a long way. I think in Pakistan it was that Umar Gyul that was bouncing me a lot. And Dale said to him, bounce him again and I'll kill you. And literally every other ball was a half volley from then on. So it's always good having Dale as your mate and roommate.
During your career, was there ever a time when you were at the top of the mark and you were looking to get someone out and you were genuinely intimidated by an opposition batsman? Because, I mean, there's been some greats that you've played against, and you mentioned it, Kumar Sangakkara, who for me is so elegant and just a wonderful cricketer to watch. But in your career, was it something that's not intimidated, but maybe in awe is the right word?
Sehwag was tough in India. I remember, I think it was in Chennai. Look, it was 1,000,000 degrees. It was so hot. And I think he scored 300 in a day. And that was pretty, I suppose, intimidating when I think I bowled 60-odd overs.
That's a shift.
Yeah, a lot. I think we scored 500, and then we thought we were in the game. They scored 700, and then we scored 300 for what? They were 300 for 1, and it was a draw. It was a pretty flat pitch, but in that particular game, he was pretty scary. I think he hit Mackay for 20 in the over before tea to get to 200. So he was in India. That guy was a genius. Out of India, not so much. But in India, he was an absolute genius. It was actually the next test match when I think we bowled him out for 46 or something ridiculous. Dale got 5. But the first ball of the test, he flicked Dale for 6. And we were like, oh, goodness, here we go again. Here we go again. But luckily he got out quickly. But he was pretty intimidating, I think, if you want to look at that. I think bowlers were more intimidating for me than batsmen. Mitchell Johnson was a pretty scary sight when he got going. He bowled that spell in Perth to us, even though he won that test. I think he got 5 for 3 or something, and that old Perth wicket was a trampoline. It was really quick. It was a really quick pitch, and he came in and got it right. And I tell you what, he was bowling thunderbolts. And as you know, there's a few times when I become a night watchman, and that night you have a few nervous hours of sleep. But I wouldn't say I was intimidated by guys, but you're certainly wary of what they can do to you, right? And at the end of the day, my theory was they're the genius, you not. Then just go out there and have a jaw.
Yeah. And I mean, when someone was bowling thunderbolts, there's a bit of a nervous energy in the change room, right? Especially if you got guys like Callis, Amla, Smith who have been rattled or, nicked off by a rapid delivery.
I remember coming in and Woogie was on the other end and he said to me, "You're going to get your body going here, my friend, otherwise you're going to get into some trouble here." Yeah. So luckily I was pre-warned that he was going to bowl quite quickly. In fact, the first ball he bowled me, it took my shirt down the leg side. And there was no DRS, and they all massive appeal, and I was like, "Oh, please give me out." And then he gave me not out, and I was like, "Oh, damn it, I've got to carry on here." But look, I mean, we one thing I will say about that tour in particular is the tail were amazing. I mean, if you remember that Test match in Melbourne, which I'll never forget. In fact, my best day of cricket ever, I never bowled a ball. That was when I got 40, but that's beside the point. JP got 160, and Dale got 78. But there wasn't a fluke. I mean, Barchi had throughout that whole series and before taken a tennis racket and Slazenger balls, because Slazenger balls will bruise, they won't break bones.
Yeah.
And he was serving them as hard as he can. He can be a pretty nasty piece of work when he wants to be, Barchi. So he was trying to really hurt us.
In the nets, right?
In the nets, yeah. With a tennis racket.
Off 22 yards?
Literally off 20 yards.
Oh, wow.
And I mean, if you can face that, you can face anything.
Dodgeball.
And it was basically like along the lines of either get out the way or get hit.
Yeah.
And that was kind of, and we were, there was a swear word back to him, and there was a few guys throwing their toys at the cot, myself included, thinking Barchi was a bit of an idiot. But actually what he did was he was getting us ready for what we were going to get.
Yeah.
I mean, we weren't getting many balls in our half from any of them. No. I mean, you had Brett Lee on the one side, Mitchell Johnson on the other. You're not, as a tail ender, you're not getting many in your half. And I mean, at the end of the day, our tail won us that series, if you look at it. So that hard work and that energy that Barch put into us was the right thing to do, although it wasn't fun.
You guys were a tight unit. I mean, that test squad, you had a group of senior players. I mean, like you said, for a long time, there was very little change in that group of players.
We still call them the clique, eh?
I think so.
It's funny.
And the media had a field day with this clique, right? At times. I mean, is that something you paid attention to, or was it about getting the job done and we're here to play cricket and win series for South Africa?
Well, anyone that was in that clique were my mates, so I didn't really have too much of an issue with it, really. I mean, I think it was more of a, people were trying to poke holes in a very good side. I don't think there was anything untoward with it. Were there guys that were more senior than others? Yes, but that's how a cricket team should be run.
Yeah.
You have it's almost like in cricket, your coach is more of a manager, your captain is the CEO, and then you have various management levels underneath him. And that's pretty much how it worked. From a discipline perspective, it was handled by the senior guys, and it was handled quickly and efficiently. I thrived in that environment because there were some pretty hard individuals there, and still I'm mates with them to this day. So that's the cool thing about professional sport. Well, it should be, is that you make lifelong mates. You play for only a short period of time, or some guys long, like Woogie, but in general, a short period of time and a lifetime, and make the most of it. I think I certainly believe I did.
Absolutely. I think you can be incredibly proud of your career. I mean, obviously, there's one or two moments that probably could have seen you play more Test cricket, but at the end of the day, I think if someone said to Paul Harris, when you started playing for Titans, before wherever it was, before you even made your step to the national team, you're going to play 37 Test matches, win some series, be number one team in the world, I think you would have taken that.
I would have taken one. I did. I mean, I gave up Kolpak to, it would have been a lot more lucrative to, I was asked, do I regret it? I don't. Even if it had been one test, it would have been worth it. That's what I wanted to do since I can remember, right? And going to Fisher, probably not a traditional school, though I loved it. It's a fantastic school. Wasn't selected for any sort of provincial teams growing up. And then it was actually Vincent Bonds who gave me a crack. I'd actually finished school, but I was born later in the year, so I could play under 19 cricket later. So there was a December tour, and he asked me to come. I thought I was going there as a net bowler, and then he gave me my kit and said, "You're going on the plane in 2 days' time." I had long dreadlocks. Obviously, had to cut that off. Wasn't allowed to play with that, and got the chance there. So I think I've been fighting sort of my whole, even from young, to make teams, and then even then, that Western Province team was so good. They had Hendo and Gogi there. I didn't play much, so I had to move to Pretoria, which has become my second favorite city in the country by a long way. People are amazing. Weather's good. It's just a really cool place to live, and met my wife there, which was great, and got two young kiddies there, so pretty stoked. I can't complain.
I mean, you think of your tenure at the Titans. I mean, you guys were a winning machine. I mean,
it was a good side.
It was a really good side, and I think you guys sort of struck fear in the hearts of many other teams that you've faced.
Yeah, it was a very good cricket team, I must admit. We were very well managed as well. Richard Pybus was superb as a coach. Martin van Jaarsveld was a brilliant captain, and so was Pierre Joubert when he took over. Some of my fondest memories of playing cricket was playing in that Titans team. We were a pretty ruthless bunch, to be fair. We had guys like Peter Brain in that side. Old Yassi, you didn't want to get on the wrong side of him. You didn't want to get on the wrong side of Jiggy or Yada. We had guys like Justin Kemp in that side when it was really good. Then you had youngsters coming in like Faf, AB, Dale, Mornay. I mean, the list just keeps on going. Hainu Kun, who was a serious player for the Titans, Ethi and Belati, The names just keep on coming, and we probably could have picked two sides that could have competed at the time. So for me, there was a hell of a cricket team, and my fondest memories of playing in that Titans team.
When you look at current South African sort of setup and cricket in general, like what are your thoughts? Because, I think there's growth, but at the same time, I feel like we haven't quite sort of been able to reach the heights of the guys like, when you guys played. I know we made a World Cup final, and that's a fantastic achievement, but I just feel like there's something kind of missing at the moment. Is it something that maybe just finding the right combinations or?
Look, I'm not. Again, I don't watch a hell of a lot of cricket, especially domestic cricket these days. So probably the wrong guy to give too much into it. But if you compare it to the rugby, I think the rugby guys have managed to get it right, and they've managed to sort of bind a completely mutually exclusive team. I mean, you look at it; it's all walks of life.
Yeah.
Black, white, Indian, that doesn't make a difference. And every single guy they're a merit. I think cricket still has that stigma of, the quota sort of stigma, which I think hasn't gone away for some reason for cricket. And there have been some superb players. And I think that rugby's got it right. And my theory is you've got to take the money, put guys into the best schools. Our schooling system is phenomenal.
Yeah.
It produces international sportsmen. It's been proven over generations. That's what it does. I think that's what rugby's done very well, is they've identified talent. And they can be any colour, any creed. They've identified talent and they've put them in the correct schools. And I think that's where cricket maybe has missed a beat. Is you need to go have proper scouting systems, go out, find talent. You can't tell me there aren't another 20, 30, 40, 50 Rabaders in this country.
Yeah.
You cannot tell me that. Has to be.
Has to be.
I mean, with the talent we have in this country, 60 million odd people, there's got to be more.
Yeah.
So I think in that area, Cricket South Africa haven't covered themselves in glory. In general, Cricket South African board hasn't covered themselves in glory over the last 20 years, where I think rugby has got it right. I think rugby has had up until when Graham left, I don't think we've had an proper inspirational leader. I think Faf was good, but he wasn't that Graham Smith or a Sias and that's what South African sport thrives on. I mean, we had Francois Pienaar, we had John Smith in rugby, then we've had Sias, 2 World Cup legend. We had Hansie Cronje, we had Graham Smith. These characters seem to be what binds us together. And then look, I think rugby got lucky with Rassie. You don't often find a brain like that floating around, an eccentric brain like that floating around as you would with him. And I think he struck fear into a lot of opposition. Just having a guy like him around, I think they already start thinking he's got some scheme that he wants to come up with, and it sort of dilutes their attention of what they're trying to achieve. So I think cricket's missed that.
Yeah.
That out-and-out sort of leader quality where everyone can rally around them. And rugby has certainly done that. Having said that, though, there's so much talent in this country. Yeah. I've seen some young, talented cricketers now. I know it didn't go our way against India. We played some young bowlers. I'm not a massive fan of playing a full team of young bowlers. I would like to see a couple of the senior guys around them. But I do understand that the coaches have got to try and manage workloads, although that wasn't a thing in our day. I don't know why it is now. But they seem to want to manage workloads. But I mean, you've got to have either Heinrich Nokia or a Rabada, playing in these games with these youngsters, to try and get them through it.
And hindsight is 2020, I know that. Had we won that World Cup, do you think that might have been the watershed moment that changed the perception around cricket in general?
Well, I think so. I think you've got to win one of them before people will change their tune, right? You're going to keep getting the tag of you can't get it over the line, or whatever they want to call it, the choker tag or whatever it is. That's going to go around until you win one. You're going to have that, on your back. It's just going to happen. Our rugby's there is where it is for a reason. It's because they win.
Yeah.
If they hadn't won the World Cups, it wouldn't be where they're at. I mean, 4 World Cups, 2 in a row, and cheapers. I mean, we wouldn't bet against them to win 3 in a row at the moment with the way our rugby is going.
We have 2 starting 15s.
It's ridiculous.
Basically.
I mean, it's absolutely ludicrous how good and how much depth we have in our rugby. And look, it's my favorite sport by a mile.
No, I can tell.
I love it. I just think that it just gives you everything you need. It's sort of red-blooded South African male. It gives you everything you need. So look, I think they've got it right. I think there's a lot of respect in that team for everybody.
Yeah.
I think they're led exceptionally well by Sias. People can say what they want about how good he is or where he's at in his career in terms of playing. You've got a leader like that, and it really does make the world of difference.
No, world-class human being too.
He's a great guy, and cheapers. My son, if he saw him, I think he'd start crying. So he'd be so excited. So, they're certainly good role models for the youngsters.
I mean, you look at the talent, and like you say, I mean, I'm hearing stories of 15-year-olds hitting 160 in a T20 game.
Never heard of that before.
There's kids that I've heard of at certain schools that are on full-time cricket programs that have already been fast-tracked. Whether that's healthy remains to be seen, because I think a teenager should be exposed to the various other sports.
I agree. Look, it's becoming more and more difficult. I mean, the professional era is now pushing further and further down the line. Well, let's go younger and younger down the line. Schools have got professional sports coaches in. It's full-time, basically choose a sport and play it. Look, I don't necessarily have a problem with it as long as you're playing sports.
Yeah.
I think that it shouldn't be forced, but it should be certainly pushed that sport is good, keeps the youngsters fit. These days there's too many sort of overweight, slobby kids that just, play computer games or on their... I don't even know what computer games look like, to be fair, so I'm useless even if you're going to ask me. But playing PlayStations and on their phones the whole time. And if you're playing sport, I don't care what it is. I would like to, and I encourage my kids to play as many as possible. But I do understand that there's only a certain amount of time that you got in the afternoons to be able to do it. And if you get good at one, then they're going to sort of push you into doing more of it. So as long as you're playing sport, for me, don't have an issue how much you play.
I've got to ask you, just where you are now in your career. You said you used to commentate. I mean, we worked together on SuperSport, doing some domestic cricket at one point. That sort of transition, right, out of retirement. And I know actually there's an article that I briefly skimmed over where you said it's not all roses. And I know you mentioned that for the first year you didn't earn any money. But when you eventually decide to hang up those spikes, it must feel rather lonely, because it's not always certain where you're going to land next. And I suppose, what is your advice then for, there's a lot of athletes that will continue to come, cricketers, rugby players, whatever you name it, footballers, that will go through the channels. If they're lucky, they get 10 years at the highest level. But then it comes to an end. And there's a relevance factor that suddenly is out the window. You're not the guy that's putting on the green and gold jersey or the white test jumper or whatever it may be. And I feel like part of you goes kind of missing, right? Or an identity. Is there something you could sort of share with some athletes that might be coming towards that end, or at least thinking about it at some point?
Look, there's a few things. One, upskill. Upskill yourself. Don't stop upskilling yourself. I thought that I was busy when I was playing cricket. I wasn't. I was busy when I had a full-time job, 2 kids, and doing a degree. Now that's fun and games.
Yeah.
That's working until 3 a.m. and that's busy. So upskill yourself. It doesn't necessarily have to be a degree, but find something that interests you and research it, understand it, and keep upskilling yourself. You want to be hireable when you're finished playing. So many sportsmen are unhireable. Understand that you have to network. Network well while you're playing. My saving grace was networking well, meeting people along the way. But if you haven't upskilled yourself, one thing I have realized is if you haven't upskilled yourself and let's say you meet use an example, Johan Rupert, for example, and you go into his office and you try and sell him something, make sure you have your ducks in a row.
Yeah.
Because if you don't, just because he knows you and thinks you're cool doesn't mean he's going to buy what you're selling.
Yeah.
So make sure you know what you're talking about. And then persevere. I think that's the main thing. I think that, life hasn't been harder and it hasn't been better than it is now. I think with the economy, the way it's going now, I think I'm positive. The GNU has been good for South Africa. I think there's a newfound positivity in general. There's foreign investment coming back into the country. Are we where we should be? Not by any stretch of the imagination, but there seems to be a newfound sort of level of energy, positive energy. which I haven't felt in a long time in SA from a sort of, let's say, political and economic view. So as a youngster, literally, upskill yourself as much as you can. If you can go in the early part of your career and go and study something and do a degree, go do it, and make yourself as hireable as possible. And understand when you're young, you've got time.
Yeah. I think that something people don't tell you enough, right? When you're young.
And people say, you play professional sport, you don't have time to study. It's an absolute garbage story. Yes, you might miss the odd exam, but you can always go to the university and say, look, I'm playing professional sport. Can we do a sup, or can we do it at a different date? And they will tend to give you the grace to do it. So I don't believe that. If I had a regret, that would be it. Is maybe didn't upskill myself as much as I should have, especially from 20 to 30. You've got so much time.
Speaking of time, in your career, you were faced with a decision to go Colpack. You took that. Was that something that, I mean, with one eye on your end of days playing, or was maybe just sort of clarify a little bit there what happened?
For me, it was more of an opportunity than anything else. I was playing. I just started playing really well for the Titans. I wasn't really getting a look in at national level. I was playing club cricket in the UK in the off season, and Dan Faturi got a stress fracture. Jonathan Trott and Neil Carter and Heath Streak were all at Warwickshire, and they were looking for a replacement. They said, well, this clown's down the road. Let's bring him up and see what he can do. And
so you were already in the UK?
I was in the UK playing club cricket here. And then they said, look, we got to sign you as a Colpack, because not as an overseas. And I was making 3 times what I would make in half a season there than I was at the Titans. So for me, financially it made sense. I wasn't going anywhere, it didn't feel like I was going anywhere from a South African cricket perspective. And I don't think I would have been selected for the Proteas if I didn't do it. Went to, I don't know how many wickets I got in the season for Warwickshire, but it was a lot. In that first year, I think it was close to 100 wickets in the first season with them. And I think that kind of, because I'd come off a great season for the Titans and then straight away did it for Warwickshire, you were still front of mind. So I don't think I would have got selected if it wasn't for that. And then, some of my best years as well was at Warwickshire. They really treated me incredibly well. It was a hell of a club to play for. And I'm still good friends with a lot of them. Look, it helped that there were quite a few Saffers in that side. We had a great time. But do I have regrets doing it? No. Did it irritate a few of the English guys? Sure. You take Colpack and then reverse it. But it is what it is.
Did you feel at the time there was a question mark around your loyalty to the country when you signed as Colpack?
No. Maybe. Maybe other people had that, but I didn't certainly feel that. I was a professional sportsman, and I was doing what professional sportsmen should be allowed to do.
Absolutely.
You should be allowed to play wherever. There shouldn't be a limit as to where you can apply your trade. There isn't in business.
Yeah.
So why should there be in sport? Now it wouldn't even be looked at in the.
You think of the leagues all over the world, right?
Sure, exactly. I was on taking national contracts, choosing to play in leagues.
Yeah.
So, no, I don't think I didn't feel that, certainly. I think there was it was used. There were too many Colpacks, I think, at one stage, so it was irritating the Poms. And sure, but they got so many teams there. There were 18 first-class teams there. Some of the rubbish that we saw playing there was, it's just ridiculous. So I think the Saffers and the Colpacks definitely increased the level of cricket in the UK. Which in turn increased their English players and made them play better. So I think it was good for English cricket, and I certainly didn't feel like I turned my back.
Yeah.
I was just doing what a pro sportsman would do, and I wasn't getting on, but what was I? I was 26 years old. Hadn't got a
still young as a spinner.
But hadn't really got a look in, and they were offering me good money to go and play cricket.
No one can blame you.
No, and I learned how to bowl in different conditions. You look at the UK, you go and play in Birmingham, it's grey, it's cold, it's miserable, and then you go play in Sussex, where it's still grey, cold, and miserable, but a bit warmer,
a little bit of sun,
and a bit dusty, and it turns square, and then you go up to Durham, and it's green, and they've got the best seam bowling attack that any first-class cricket team's ever had.
Yeah.
So you get different conditions, and you learn to bowl in different conditions, and you learn to bowl a hell of a lot. You play 5 days a week, and you travel too. So for me, it was wonderful. I never had to practice.
Yeah.
And I was competing all the time. It was good fun.
And I suppose it had a knock-on effect with your international career, because like you say, had you not done it, the potential you wouldn't have been picked for the national
Well,
team.
that's it. And also when I went to tour England, I mean, I played at every single ground. So it's not like the first time you get there is the first time you get there. You've played there, you get to Lords and you've played there 3 times.
Yeah.
So it's not like this,
I'm going to bowl from that end because it does that,
know
right?
what you kind of know what to expect. I mean, it's still a test match, so it's different to a first-class game, way different. But it's time to take the edge off effectively. I had a great time there, and I wouldn't have traded it.
I think you've done very well, my man.
Cheers.
You can be very, very proud.
Yeah, I think it sinks in as you get older. I think my son's upset with me that I retired so young because he would like to have seen a bit more. But yeah, I'm very content. I realised that I was incredibly fortunate to have played as much as I did. There's too many exports with chips on their shoulders and, that are upset with the system. I'm certainly not. I'm very grateful for what I was given by Cricket South Africa. And yeah, no one can take it away, can they?
No ways.
It's pretty cool.
It's in the history books. Cricinfo has it. It's official.
Well, Andrew Sanson, what a beast.
I think looking at Test cricket, it's still the purest form. Obviously, these days it's a bit under threat from all the white ball stuff, but I still feel, and I'm a Test match purist, it still has its place in the international cricket calendar, right? We don't play enough Test cricket.
That's the problem, right? Is that the big 3 have kind of taken over cricket, and we're not getting enough Test match cricket. That's for sure. For sure. I mean, I've got a bit of a different theory on it. I would get rid of 50-over cricket.
Okay.
Completely. It's so boring. I mean,
Yeah.
it's 100 overs in a day. It takes too long. Those middle overs are like watching paint dry.
Yeah.
I mean, it's just not really. I would get rid of it, scrap it completely, and you play Test cricket and T20s. And then T20 becomes your commercial arm, and it supports Test cricket. Test cricket can't go anywhere. I don't think it will. You ask any player, they want to play Test cricket.
Yeah.
A good Test cricketer can move on to be a good T20 player, but a good T20 player can't necessarily move on and be a good Test cricketer.
100%.
So, I think that's what I would do. I think 50-over cricket's archaic. And T20 will bring in the revenue, and look, I think Test cricket then will get a bit more recognition and be where it's at. But I'm with you. I think Test cricket's the pinnacle. I mean, watching a good Test match, there's nothing better, really, for me to watching cricket. And then you have T20 that can please the crowds and the youngsters and bring in the cash.
I think you look at sort of Betway, say 20, for example, and the knock-on effect that it's had in our cricket. I certainly think it's pumped some proper energy and life back into cricket. I know it's only played for a short space of time,
Sure.
but I mean, crowds are in, families are watching, and it's brilliant cricket to watch because we've got some quality players.
Well, I think you've hit the nail on the head there. I think it's quality cricket. I think the public know that. I think that, once again, you've got a very good leader running it. People will give Graham Smith a lot of credit in what he's done. I know he's got a team under him and he's been smart. He's picked a really, really world-class team around him. I like the way you threw Betway in there, and just to give you a bit of, but they've been brilliant. Having a company like Betway sponsor it, without them it wouldn't happen.
Sure.
And all the other sponsors, but the main headline sponsor, having them there is huge. And look, it reminds me of the old Benson Hedges days. It really does.
Come on, Summer.
I'm that old that I remember that. It reminds me. It's got that same feel.
Yeah.
Let's take international cricket out of it. I don't know when last I saw a domestic game at Superstore Park and there is not a seat in the place.
Yeah.
And it wasn't just Superstore Park, it was all the grounds, but I just happened to go to the game at Superstore Park. I went to a couple at Newlands and then Johannesburg, and it's packed stadiums.
Yeah.
It's what you want, right?
Exactly.
It's been marketed very well. So you've got to give the team a sort of pat in the back. But again, the bottom line is, if you have a good product, South Africans will come out and support. And it's an incredibly good product.
Just before we wrap up, we've got a few moments. I'm just, off the top of your head, fire you a few questions. Favorite ground?
Newlands by miles.
Okay. Overseas ground?
MCG.
And that's a special place, man.
That's why. I mean, you don't, as a cricketer, you don't often get to play in a Coliseum. And that literally is a Coliseum. The Boxing Day Test, there was 100,000 people in that stadium. And I certainly didn't realize how many 100,000 is. It's a lot. It's a lot. I mean, Bay 13 is one bay, a notorious bay, and it takes the same amount of people to Superstore Park in one bay. So, Newlands here, and then the MCG was pretty cool.
Fastest bowler you ever faced?
Mitchell Johnson. Shoaib Akhtar and Mitchell Johnson.
Yeah.
Those are the two.
Okay. Mitchell in Australia?
Yeah, Mitchell in Australia was pretty scary.
Okay. And Shoaib, just the longest run in the
Shoaib, I
world.
faced him in Port Elizabeth. Luckily, it was 3 balls, and then he pulled a hamstring. That's the most excited I've ever seen Jacques Callis in my life. And then the next ball, they gave it to Mohammed Shami, and he hit me in the head. So he bowled 150 k's, and I hit me in the head. So
Where's Shoaib?
Shoaib was quick. Shoaib was scary.
Yeah. Best batsman you've bowled to?
De Villiers or Callis. Those are the South African bowlers. Look, you have to throw Sachin in there. He was pretty good, and I really struggled against VVS, Laxman. I thought he was a seriously good player of spin bowling. So I'd say, yeah, those were the 2 overseas, but the King, Callis, and AB were special.
Best chirp you've ever heard?
Sure, I don't know which one I can say on. I can probably say my one. I kept getting told by a guy in Australia the whole day, you bowl a naked ball, mate. The whole day he kept saying to me, I bowl a naked ball. And eventually I said to Callis, this guy's irritating me. He says, go ask him. So I said, what do you mean? What is a naked ball? He says, it's got nothing on it, mate. so I thought that was pretty funny. The Aussies are pretty good with that sort of stuff. So that was a good one. There's some naughty ones which I'll tell you off air.
Best team you've played against?
It would have to be the Aussie team that we beat in 2008. Look, that Indian team was special in India as well. I mean, they had a seriously good batting lineup. And what did they have? They had Sehwag, they had Gambia, then they had 3 Dravid, 4 was Tendulkar, 5 Laxman. I mean, that is, and then they had Dhoni at 6.
That's proper.
I mean, that's a serious batting lineup. So in India, that would have to be that Indian team. Out of India, that Australian team was pretty good.
And last one, cricketer you look up to most, past, present?
Smithy, Graham. I think having him as the captain of that side, he was very good for me. There's a few. Yada, Martin van Jaarsveld was really good for me at the time. He's a disciplinarian and son of proper Afrikaans guy. We've become very good mates. But he really kept me in check when I needed it when I was younger. So yeah, those 2 guys were good for me. I think as leaders.
And Bouchy the most irritating?
Oh, Bouchy's probably taught me the most, right and wrong. You're such a competitor, that guy. He still is. I mean, he competes eating breakfast, cornflakes in the morning. He's a highly competitive individual. I know he might not be everyone's cup of tea,
sure,
but for me, he's just fantastic.
No, I think
I love the way he does things and just his general thing, just general way he is. I quite enjoy him, but hugely competitive. And there's one way, and it's Bouchy's way.
I just see the Slasballs tennis racket pelting you.
He was ready to. He was trying to hurt us.
Shout out to Bouchy.
Old Rab. He's a good man.
Thank you so much for your time, Paul Harris. That's all we have time for, unfortunately. It's been great. Thanks for making time. Keep up the amazing work with the business.
Cheers.
And I hope you have a great 2025. 2024 is done and dusted. So look forward to hearing good things from you in the new year.
Thank you, man. It's a great show, and thank you for having me.
Anytime. You're welcome anytime. Thanks so much for watching the Sias du Plessis show. Remember to like and subscribe on YouTube. We're also available on Spotify. And of course, proudly brought to you by Bedway.